What's going on, guys? Before we get into the meat of the video, I want to reiterate something to you guys. I'm committed to having you guys trust me with the stuff that I bring to you, so I'm never going to clickbait you or put some misleading title in order to get you to click on it just so I can make $1 off of you. I don't even make money on this channel, and even when I do, that's not going to be something I'm doing. So I just want to reiterate that to you. I had to stop watching a creator yesterday that I've watched for a long time because of it, and they broke my trust, and so I stopped watching them. So I won't do that to you guys. I just want to reiterate that to you. Today, we're going to be talking about, it's been a pretty big 36 hours as far as news and stuff that released or got announced within the last 36 hours. It's been pretty ridiculous. This video is going to be talking specifically about the Xbox Series S, which has been announced, and I have to say right off the bat, I guess I was wrong about this console. I didn't think they were going to do something like this, and they did. So I was wrong, and yeah, so we'll get into that in a little bit, but just real quick, I wanted to briefly touch on the other thing that happened, which was Call of Duty. So there's this guy I watch sometimes called Jack Frags, who's a PC player, but he's a big Warzone player, and he mentioned something about the multiplayer reveal on September 9th, and I wouldn't have known that if he hadn't said anything about it. So anyway, so that happened. They released the multiplayer info today. They released a multiplayer trailer, and then they had a 4-hour live stream, actually, detailing just the game in general and all this kind of stuff. And I was going to make it its own video, but I don't really have that much to say about it, honestly. When I was first watching it, I watched the trailer. I've seen the trailer now about 5 times. I watched it once, and then at the beginning of the thing, they showed it a second time. At the end, they showed it a third time. And at the very end, they showed it a 4th time. So I've seen it a few times. But yeah, so check that out if you want, the multiplayer reveal trailer. And then they actually had a live stream that was the multiplayer reveal live stream, which was about 4 hours long. And there was about 45 minutes of like real in-depth stuff about the game, and then about 3 hours of just streamers and content creators playing the game and them doing like some live commentary over the top of that. They basically have all been playing in an alpha for a little while and sort of, just sort of giving us an idea of what the game looks like. So yeah, I was getting really hyped. There's some really cool stuff. The story elements are really cool. They've had some cool Easter eggs. And the beginning of the live stream was actually really sick. It was like some guys flying in a U-2 spy plane, and they were just sort of doing a countdown for about like 30 minutes or whatever, or 20 minutes. And they were counting down, but they were showing some of the maps, and it was like this cool little Easter egg type thing, and it just gave a really cool atmosphere. So I was really excited to watch that. Just real quick before we go any further, though, I don't drive in this class very often, and I'm very unfamiliar with this car. And on top of that, I am using a clutch, which I don't use in the X class, the F1 class, because it makes you slower. In this class, you're slower without it, so I have to run the clutch. And then I actually took ABS off, something I should have done years ago, but I finally removed ABS. So there's a lot of things I'm worrying about here. So you'll see me driving pretty poorly. It's not because I'm a bad driver. I just took off a lot of assists, or added a lot of assists that I'm not used to using. So. But yeah, the game was making me pretty hyped. But then I watched the gameplay of it, and gameplay-wise, yeah, I was pretty underwhelmed, to say the least. Well, I'll just say I was underwhelmed. Not even pretty underwhelmed, I was underwhelmed. And so, yeah, so I won't talk too much more about that. That's just a thing. The game's releasing on November 13th. And I'll definitely be getting the game. I'll be pre-ordering it, and I'll be playing the beta, so I'll have content for you guys when the beta comes out. Obviously, the Xbox version of the beta, because I'm not on a PlayStation, which is that's a whole other thing. But, yeah, so anyway. But let's get into the real meat of this video, and that is the Xbox Series S. Something that I thought for a long time was not going to exist. And then over time, I sort of started thinking it was possible it could exist, and then I went back to thinking, no, it's not going to exist, and I went back to thinking, oh, they should, and then I went back to thinking that it'd be stupid, and then I realized it would actually be a smart thing for them to release it, so I've been going back and forth about it, but I was more than halfway sure, more than 50% sure it was not going to happen, and it did. Here it is, and they released it the other day. So before I get into that, though, let's talk about what they've been doing, and that is Sony and Microsoft have not released any information about these consoles' pricing or about the release dates, and Microsoft had released nothing about the Series S. In fact, it was still considered a rumor up until this week. Even though there were a lot of people who were fairly confident that it was real, including some of the people that I listened to that basically were calling people idiots for saying that it wasn't real. you know, it's been a rumor stage for a long time, and this whole like build up to the generation has been a real joke, in my opinion. I mean, they're giving us 8 weeks at this point. They're saying, oh yeah, here's the information, and yeah, it's launching in 8 weeks. So people who are gonna have to save up money for this console, including me, I didn't start saving for it yet. I don't have the money to buy it yet. So, well, I don't have the money set aside to buy it yet. So, you know, all these people who just have, like, they're just, oh, okay, well, I guess I have 8 weeks to save up $500 now, or $550 if you want a game, you know, $600. So it's been a joke. It's been a real disgrace, the way they've been doing this, and neither of them want to announce price because they wanted to go as low as possible. But it's been a real disgrace on both of these companies' ends from not releasing pricing information until this late in the game. It's completely unacceptable, and I don't think we should stand for it as gamers. I don't think we should stand for that. So this week. So, okay, another little tiny backstory. So Microsoft said that they've been doing really well. Up until the last 5 months, they've been doing really well. They basically have been releasing information slowly. They've been getting out ahead of it. They've been just sort of being really transparent. Everybody's been really thrilled with it. And so then they said we're going to have this May event where we're going to showcase the next-gen gameplay, and it's going to be the world premiere reveal of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and it's going to be great. And so everybody was really excited, and then they also said we're going to be doing monthly events to sort of keep you guys clued in on what's happening so that we can, you know, so we can let you know what's going on with these consoles. So May comes. Everybody's super hyped. They released this thing. First of all, it's a stream at 30 FPS, which made a lot of people upset. Actually, me included, you know. That's one of the bigger benefits of this generation is 60 FPS. Pretty much close to standard on Xbox, and they just didn't showcase that. So that got a lot of flack for that, but pretty much the whole stream was like this big deal of like, hey, make sure you stay tuned for, you know, Assassin's Creed Valhalla gameplay, blah, and all this kind of stuff, world premiere reveal and all this stuff. Basically clickbaiting you the whole time, getting you to the end of the video, to the end of the stream, and then they showcased it, and there was no gameplay. So that made a lot of people really upset. And they got lambasted for that. And in so much so, in fact, within like 2 days, within 48 hours, they came out and said, okay, look, a lot of the games looked good. I thought there were some cool looking games in there, but just they didn't do it right. And a lot of people said that was completely not okay, that was unacceptable. And Microsoft had to come out within 48 hours and say, look, we're sorry. Obviously, we set a false high expectation for you guys, and we're not going to do that again. We've heard you, we understand, and we won't do that again. So you think, okay, well, lesson learned. They've been doing well so far. Lesson learned. They'll come back stronger next time. So then they start talking about the June event, and everyone's talking about the June event. What's going to happen at the June event? Are we going to get pre-order info? You know, no pricing, no info on the May event. And then June comes, and June goes, and there's been no event. And everybody starts getting mad, and they say, what's going on, Xbox? You said you were going to have monthly events. And what's going on with that? And they come out and say, actually, we didn't say that. One of the guys from Xbox tweeted, you know, we didn't actually say that. We said we were going to be doing a steady stream of content. And somebody screenshotted the actual thing that they said and sent it to him, and they literally said we will be doing monthly content drops. And then Microsoft just never responded after that. They were like, oh, well, whatever. It's basically like saying, it's basically like what Trump does, right? I'm not going political here. I don't dislike or like Trump. I'm just using him as an example because he does that. He'll be like, I never said that. And someone's like, actually, yeah, you did. And they point it out, and he goes, oh, well, yeah, maybe I did. Anyway, so they just sort of blow it off like it didn't happen. And Microsoft did the same thing. And so then they say July event's the big one, right? July is the big one. You know, they're going to release all the first-party games, all this kind of stuff. And July event comes, July event goes. The only credit I can give to the July event was that they went at 60 FPS instead of 30, but they went down to 1080p. And then I don't know what that guy was doing. But then they also, and the other plus is they also showed like 9 minutes of Halo gameplay, which was significant. Everything else about that event was terrible. They didn't show any gameplay. The games didn't look that good. And Halo was completely unfinished and not in a state to show, and I'm actually super surprised that they showed it at all. I'm pretty sure they were going to try to ship the game like that. And the fact that everybody freaked out and complained so hard, they're like, all right, maybe we shouldn't. And that's a real problem for me. The fact that they were going to try to ship a game that looked like that at this stage. Obviously, it would have looked a lot better, you know, in 3 months when they actually, 3.5 months when they shipped it. But that's only 90 days, guys. That's not very much time. And I'm frankly appalled that they were going to try to release that game in that state. So that's what got me on the first thing of like, hey man, maybe Microsoft doesn't know what they're doing. Maybe they've just gotten lucky and they don't know what they're doing. So then August event, right? August event. Still, again, no pre-order information, no pricing information, no talk about the Xbox Series S, which has been rumored since like April that it's a real thing, and they haven't talked about it at all. I haven't said anything about it. So August event, right? August is going to be the big event. That's going to be where they release everything. That's going to be where it all comes together. Blah, blah, blah. Well, August comes and August goes and no event in August. And people are like, guys, what is going on? What are you doing? Are you releasing anything? Are you going to release any info about these consoles? So then they say, oh, well, we're going to do an event in September, which is like, okay. And then it's like, well, we're going to do it September 22nd, which is like, wow, and I have to wait almost another month for that. So I think at this point, me included, I think everybody is just sick and tired of this garbage that they're pulling, man. This absolute crap that they're pulling with us, yanking us around, jerking our chain around. Oh, we're going to do this. Then, oh, no, we're going to do this event. Oh, okay, we're going to do this event. We're going to do blah, blah, blah. So essentially, the rumor is that this information was stolen from Microsoft. Not that it leaked somehow, but the rumor that I've been hearing is that it was actually stolen. Now, that could be completely false. I only heard that from one person. But they're a, relatively reliable source. But I think everybody's just sick and tired of this. So somebody leaked the information for the Xbox Series S and forced Microsoft's hand because Microsoft said, well, now that it's officially leaked, we can't really do anything about it. I'm going to give a shout out to my brother-in-law who sent me the information. I woke up one day and I had a message from him that was a screenshot of the Series S, and I thought, what? It's real. And then that same day, Microsoft had to release the reveal trailer for the Series S. That was yesterday. So now today, they released I'm a day behind in the video. So 2 days ago, I guess they released that. And then yesterday, they released the reveal trailer for the Series S. And I have to give a shout out to my buddy who sent that to me. Again, I wouldn't have looked because that information just came out yesterday, but he sent it to me. Shout out to him. He knows who he is. And so I watched it from that. And so let's go over the specs here because it's some things are shocking, truly shocking, and some things are I expected it the whole time if they came out with an S. So firstly, it's $299. That's a pretty good price. And I think they're going to move a lot of units with that. I think a lot of people are going to be like, wow, next gen for $299, I'm going to do that. And I think that's a good thing. The other thing to note right off the bat is it's a digital-only console, so no disk drive. A lot of people say that that's to save cost. Not really. Not in the way you think, at least. So the disk drive is like $25. So for them to release something without a disk drive means they can save $25 on the cost of the console. But what it actually means, though, is that if they sell a game, then there's a physical copy of that game, and it sells through Walmart or GameStop or whoever you buy your games through, or Amazon even. That's a physical copy that has to be produced, and the seller gets a cut of that, and the publisher gets a cut of that, and Microsoft and Sony get their cut of that, but only after all that other stuff. So when they sell games digitally, they sell games through their own store. They actually profit slightly more money off of every game, Microsoft and Sony do, when you buy a digital game versus a physical game. The same cut that essentially that GameStop or Walmart or the other retailer would get, Microsoft and Sony are getting because they're retailing it through their own store. So basically with a digital-only console, it allows them to sell it for a little bit cheaper because they know that 100% of the games that you buy on that console are going to have to be digital games, which means that they're going to make a little bit more profit on each of those games. There's no real numbers to know how much, but it's probably a couple bucks, $5, $8, something like that at the most per game. So they obviously have internal numbers to know how many games people buy, and even if you bought 4 games at $5 each, that's $20 plus the $25 they save with the disc drive. That could, it allows them to sell more. So that's a good thing. So as far as the specs are concerned, really quickly before we go into it, I was pretty sure the CPU would be the same. The GPU would obviously be way cut down. I was virtually convinced that it would have less RAM. I thought 8 gigabytes or 12 gigabytes. When I more thought about it, I thought 12 gigs. And then I thought for sure it would be a 512 hard drive. I thought there was no way. Those are the 3 main price components: the hard drive, which is the memory, which is the RAM, and the CPU, GPU. Those are the 3 main costs. And so yeah, I thought there wasn't much they were going to be able to do as far as cutting down the GPU. Might not make it that much better. So the CPU runs at 3.6 gigahertz as compared to 3.8 gigahertz on the Series X. when it's just an 8-core mode, but when it's an 8-core 16-thread mode, which is called simultaneous multi-threading, or SMT, it's going to run at 3.4 gigahertz as compared to the 3.6 gigahertz on the Series X. So the number one reason for that is for heat. They don't want that allows them to run it much cooler, so they don't have to have as much cooling, which allows them to make a smaller console. And then the second reason is yield, which is something that has to do with semiconductors. When they make semiconductor silicon, the yields are not great, so not every chip can reach the same frequencies at the same temperatures. So the higher spec chips, which are more expensive, are going to go into the Series X, and then it allows them to use lower quality chips to go into the the Series S, and they're not going to perform that much worse, but they just mainly the heat is a lot higher in those, so they have to run it cooler. They have to run it at a lower frequency to keep the heat down. So GPU, they didn't talk any specifics about the GPU. They didn't talk about compute units. They didn't talk about frequency, but they did say they're going to shoot for 1440p. Those of you who don't know, 1440p is sometimes called 2K, but it's basically 1080p, and then there's this 1440p, which is sort of like an in-between resolution. And then you go to 4K, which is 2160p. So they're shooting for 1440p. They said it has 120 hertz support. I would imagine with the GPU, they probably won't be able to do 1440, 120 hertz. That's just speculation on my part, but I'm pretty sure that the 120 hertz will be at 1080p. But it has the same sort of effects, so you can do variable rate shading, which allows them to put less detail on objects that are further away from you where you won't notice it. It's something that the Series X has also. VRR, which is variable refresh rate, will be on there too. So that allows your display or your TV to match up your frame rate with the game, so it looks smoother. And then it's also going to have the same mesh shading, which is just another way for them to sort of not do super detailed shading on stuff that doesn't need it. It just frees up some stuff. Like I said, no teraflop numbers, no frequency numbers, no compute unit numbers. The thing that I've been hearing for the whole time is it's about a 4 teraflop machine, which means, based on what we know about the RDNA 2.0, that means it's about equal with the Xbox One X as far as GPU power. So still going to have the same velocity architecture, which is basically a series of little things they do here and there, software, and then some hardware decompression. Most of the time the CPU handles that. It fetches the data from the hard drive, decompresses it, and then feeds it to the GPU. That's not going to be a thing on these consoles as much, because they have these hardware decompression blocks, which are dedicated hardware to decompressing data. And they also have something called direct storage, which allows the GPU to access the memory exactly. Now this lap right here was a top 20 lap. Really good lap. You'll see that at the end of the race. But yeah, so it's basically, they said it's a 2.5 times improvement with something called sampler feedback. It's about a 2.5 times improvement, and that's on top of the hardware improvements that they already had, which is pretty significant. So the SSD, 512 gigabytes, just like I thought. There's no way they can put a terabyte in there for under $300. So that's a 512 gigabyte hard drive. It'll be the same hard drive, it's just going to be 512 instead of 1 terabyte. And presumably it'll still accept the same expansion cards. They didn't talk about that, but presumably it will. They showed a demo of Outer Worlds loading, and on the One S, it loaded at 52 seconds. On the Series S, it loaded at 12 seconds. So that was pretty sick. They talked about quick resume, which, we've talked about before with the Series X. That allows you to basically resume games within like 5 or 6 seconds. But the big deal here, guys, the biggest deal is the RAM. The RAM is 10 gigabytes, which is acceptable, of GDDR6. That's awesome. It's only running at 224 gigabytes per second. For reference, the Series X has 10 of its 16 gigabytes running at 550 or something gigabytes per second. And then the slower RAM runs at 334 gigabytes per second. The Xbox One X runs at 334 gigabytes per second, about. And this is going to run at 224 gigabytes per second. In my opinion, that right there is enough to say there's basically no way it's going to be a 1440p 120 hertz machine, and there's no way it's going to be as fast as the Series X. That's pretty significant drop in memory. The PlayStation, to give you a reference, that's less than half of what the PlayStation has for memory. That is half of what the PlayStation has for memory. So it's going to be kind of bad, in my opinion, as far as the RAM is concerned. Otherwise, the console is kind of what I expected. Everything's exactly as I expected, except that RAM speed is actually atrocious, in my opinion. That's pretty unacceptable to me. But I guess we're just going to have to wait and see how it performs. So, final piece of information is $299 for the Series S, $499 for Series X, and they're going to be available November 10th, which is a Tuesday, I believe. And then the pre-orders are going to go live on September 22nd, from what we're hearing from Microsoft. So make sure you mark that day so you can get yourself one. So thank you guys for being here. I'll see you in the next one.